So I've been thinking, what would be a good book to study? And somehow the one that came to mind is this little book, Money Magnetism. Just from some of the things I've been kind of hearing, tuning into, it just felt like this would be quite a useful book at the moment to study. So when Swami wrote this book, he divided it into two parts. The first part of it talks about the principles of magnetizing money. And then in the second part, he talks about the method. So I'm not in any hurry to quickly get to the method, because we need to really understand the principles of money magnetism. And it's only a very tiny book. You can quite easily read it in one sitting. But what I found is today I must have read the first chapter, and this is no exaggeration, I think 6, 7, 8 times. And so the first time when I read it, I just quickly read it like you would read a book. And then I thought, I'm not sure if I got anything from it. And so then I started reading it kind of sentence by sentence and seeing, what am I getting from it? And the more I read it, the more I realized that what Swami has given us here are what I would call seed thoughts. As in, if you have a seed, the seed germinates, it becomes a little seedling, becomes a plant or a tree, and then it gives us fruit or flowers. And so the concepts that are mentioned in here are a bit like that. As in, we can read almost each sentence and then flesh it out as to what that could mean. And it really means meditating on it. And if you feel drawn to reading this book, I recommend not reading more than a chapter at a time and really absorb what he is saying and try and put into practice some of the concepts that you feel you are beginning to understand. Because at first sight, it doesn't seem like you can easily read it and then nothing changes. And so these are really concepts in here to meditate upon. Now, one of the things that happen when people get interested on the spiritual path is to dismiss the value of money. And one of these seed thoughts in here that Swami has written, he says that money can be used to do wonderful things. Just that line. Money can be used to do wonderful things. And when you look at, the wonderful things that Master did, he couldn't have done that without money. He didn't have money of his own, but he was able to magnetize what he needed. Same thing with Swami Kriyananda, what he has created. The whole Ananda village, you think something like that can just happen without money? Roads get built, buildings get built, gardens get landscaped. Everything needs money. And Swami's crystal hermitage, he built it when, I think he got some inheritance from his parents. So we can do wonderful things with money. Money is not something to be dismissed. In fact, every altruistic project at some point comes down to needing money. Without money, nothing really happens. And if we think that, spiritual life is about living in poverty and living in rags and all of that, we're not going to inspire anybody in this age that we are living in. People would think that something is wrong with our philosophy. So the seed thought here is money can be used to do wonderful things. And then another seed thought that I picked up from the first chapter was money represents a flow of energy. Harm comes when money is loved and hoarded for its own sake, because in hoarding we block the energy flow. Now that also says quite a lot. Money represents a flow of energy. And that when we hoard it, we block that energy flow. The thought that came to my mind is when we do energization exercises, we attract, we draw energy into this body. Can that energy be hoarded? No, right. The natural thing to do with that energy is to, in one way or another, use it. Either use it to do things in this world, or use it to then center that energy in the astral spine and to take it up and offer it into the light. As in, it's not something that we can think that, oh, now I've got all this energy and I'm not going to be doing anything with this energy because I want to keep it to myself. Well, what would happen to that kind of energy? It will probably make you very tamasic, right? Tamasic meaning energy that's not used in a constructive way, gets depleted. That energy moves down and out. And so one of the principles of magnetizing money, drawing money to yourself, is to actually use it rather than hoard it. Swami gives the example of a boy who there's a spring and he drinks water from the spring, fresh water, and he thought, wow, this is such wonderful water, fresh from the spring. It's nice and cool, feels sparkly. And so he thought he'll take some water in a bottle so that he can continue to enjoy that water. So he fills up his water bottle with this spring water, and he would only drink a little at the time to make sure that this water lasts him a long time. But after a while, the water did not taste as good as it was when he first tried it from the spring. Because what had happened was that water became stagnant. It didn't have that freshness, it didn't have the sparkles, it didn't have that coolness, and it was stale, and then he was no longer able to enjoy it. And likewise, money that we hoard becomes stagnant, gets eaten away by inflation, to put it in, economics terms. Whereas money that we are using, and depends on how we use it too. Swami says that if we waste money, as in use it in a way that is not beneficial to us and not beneficial to other people, then a time comes when the source of money gets depleted. And he gives the example of forests. He says if you keep cutting down forests and you don't replant them, then in time you create a whole lot of problems, because you are taking but not replenishing the source. And so likewise, in order to keep the source of money fresh, we have to put that money to good use. When we acquire money only to fulfill our own desires, that too depletes, that too kind of dries up the money that can then come to us. It just dries it all up. We are unable to magnetize that money. So in order for us to be able to attract money, we have to put it to good use. We know that whatever doesn't get used, not only does inflation eat it, if you don't use it, somebody else will. So recognizing money as a flow of energy rather than as a fixed thing. And that's also something kind of to get our heads around. You see, when we think of money as a fixed item and not as something that flows, what that leads to is the consciousness of lack. We think that there's only so much, whereas if we have this concept that money is a flow, then the flow can always be there. Like the spring, a spring can continue to give you water. And the more you use it, the bigger the channel becomes, and the more water you can draw from it. And likewise with money. If you think of it as a fixed item, then that thinking becomes contractive. Whereas if you think that, if I can put this money to some use, you'll be able to actually multiply that money. Arun did this experiment last year, and he had a small sum of money that he bought some fruit trees with. And he sold those fruit trees in one weekend from that small sum of money that he had put into buying those fruit trees. And then he bought double the number of fruit trees from the money that he got. And then he sold all those trees, I think within a week or two, and then he doubled that again. And in the finish, he started with 25 trees. In the finish, he ended up selling about 650 trees. And he started with $500 worth of trees, and the income at the end of it was something like $24,000. But if he had thought that, I really only have $500. I'm don't want to spend this on buying trees. What if I don't manage to sell it? I would have lost that money. Then, that $500 would have just been consumed, frittered away, right? These days, $500 is not much money. You just go and buy some petrol. You can go to the supermarket, and that $500 is just absolutely gone. But because he did something with it that not only benefited him, but it benefited other people as well. Because Everybody loves, planting fruit trees, because you spend a small amount of money on a fruit tree, like just a fraction of what you would spend on putting petrol in your car, and that tree is going to give you fruit for many, many years to come. And so he was doing something that he was passionate about. He's a member of Tree Crops, and Tree Crops like to, give everybody fruit trees, and they just like people to grow trees that will bring crops. And so he did something that he was passionate about, and that money multiplied. But if you think, oh no, I just want to keep it for myself, I might need it for a rainy day, that money actually does nothing. So you can see what I mean by money is a flow. You've got to use it, but you've got to use it in a way that that fulfills these two concepts. One is it benefits you in some way, and two, it also benefits others. If it's only for your own benefit, then you might find that there are blocks that will start appearing in your ability to magnetize money. If it's all for just me and what I want, but it needs to be for your needs. And Swami is quite clever in how he says this about need. He says, so both of these concepts, that is, learning how to attract money and how to put it to proper use, depend finally on understanding what truly constitutes our needs. And then he says, that is our own and others' highest good. As in, highest good of others is also a need that we have. So need cannot be understood just in terms of my own needs. And we'll kind of flesh this out a lot more when we get to those other chapters about we are part of a much greater reality. And you've all heard the story about the instruction that the parents of that fledgling bird gave. What you acquire, share with others, even as we have shared with you. As in, everything that comes to us, we like to think that I have done this with my own effort. But when we start realizing that we are just the vehicle through which energy flows, that the energy that flows in this body is not ours. It's cosmic energy. So everything that we do, we think that we are doing it with our own efforts. Oh, I made this happen, and I did that, and I did this. Let's put it another way. In all of this, we really are not the doers. God is the doer. And when that realization comes, we are able to get out of the way and allow God's energy to flow through us. By us thinking that I am making this happen, I am doing this, it's because of me that this other person is now in a better place, I helped this person. That I being the doer, stops the flow of energy. In fact, everything that we earn, every dollar that we earn, if we can think of it in the form of this is what God has given to me, your whole attitude to money changes. You see, in economics, there is a concept called opportunity cost. Opportunity cost in economics is like what you would give up to do something else. But in this teaching, opportunity cost doesn't exist. It's all about dharma. What is the right thing for me to do at this time? There's no such thing as opportunity cost. And if you're doing that which is right, that which is yours will always come to you. Because in opportunity cost, we think in terms of what can come to us as a fixed quantity, a fixed amount. But when we're doing that which is right, that fixed state of mind just doesn't exist. Everything is a flow. Swami says that wealth is a consciousness of abundance. It's a state of mind. Somebody who might have very little money might still be very wealthy because their mental state, in their mind, they are wealthy. They have got everything that they need. In fact, the more you have this state that I am wealthy, the mental state that I am wealthy, you'll find that the more you'll have everything that you need. A person who is wealthy actually needs very little. And he says, likewise, the state of poverty is actually a consciousness of poverty. And he gives an example of a professor that he went and visited in India, and he was working in a university. He had a nice home. Swami says that he ate very well, but he was crying to Swami about how poor he was. And he felt poor because he could not have the gadgetry like the state-of-the-art television that he had enjoyed when he went to America, because he couldn't have that in India. And so he thought he was poor. And yet, by anybody else's standard in India, this guy had everything. He was wealthy. He had a job that earned him good money, but in his mind, he was poor. And Swami gives the example of, he said in 1963, he wanted to spend his time writing a book called Crisis in Modern Thought. And he only had $10 per month to live on for 3 months. And so what he did was he grew alfalfa sprouts. I mean, $10 in 1963 was probably, I don't know, maybe, is it like maybe $500 today? I don't know. But I think, because $10 today is probably not going to even allow you to survive a day, right? But he said that he had $10 a month to live on for 3 months, so $10 each month. And so he said he grew his own alfalfa sprouts. So I imagine that he did that as instead of having to buy his vegetables, like alfalfa sprouts would give him all the nutrition that he needs. And the last 2 weeks, we haven't had a working fridge. And we haven't really got the vegetable garden quite in a state where we can pick and eat anything. And so we've basically lived on sprouts and microgreens for the past 2 weeks. And you know, it's enough. You can actually live on sprouts and microgreens as your vegetables. So he had alfalfa sprouts. He said he did not buy bread, but instead he made chapatis, Indian chapatis. Before inflation hit in the last month or two, you could buy a 10 kg bag of chapati flour for about $12. Now I think it's gone up to about $17, $18. But still, I mean, that's a 10 kg for under $20, that can make you a lot of chapatis. It lasts me about 6 months, one 10 kg bag. So, for under $20, feeding a family. So he said that's what he did. And then he said he did not buy fresh milk. He used powdered milk. I imagine powdered milk was cheaper in those days. It's not anymore. So he said he developed, he acquired the taste for powdered milk, and that did him fine. And the fourth thing he said was he would only have a spoonful of dessert rather than a whole bowl full. Sometimes we have a meal and then you feel like something sweet. And sometimes all you really need is just a little bite of sweetness. And that's enough to fulfill your craving for the sweet tooth. And so he said he did that for 3 months, and he never felt that he was living in poverty or he was depriving himself of anything. He said, if anything, it was an adventure. And he looks upon those days quite fondly. So poverty is a state of mind. And so is abundance a state of mind. And Swami also says that it's often the people who don't have very much are able to do a lot. Whereas those who have money are often unable to spend it. And your inability to spend results in you feeling that you haven't got money. You know that material success affirmation, one of the lines in there is, I lived with thoughts of, of poverty and I lived in thoughts of poverty and wrongly fancied that I was poor. So I was poor. And then the next line is, now thy consciousness has made me rich. And so it's that poverty consciousness, a feeling that I haven't got, that keeps us poor. So we need to start looking at, what am I continuously affirming? Am I affirming abundance? Am I affirming lack? Am I confirming flow? Am I confirming money as a fixed thing? There's a delightful story in the autobiography of a yogi about the 2 penniless boys in Vrindavan, which you all know. And I was kind of reflecting on that a little and just trying to see the consciousness of the 3 characters that are in that story. So one is Master's brother, Ananta. And then you've got Master, who was Mukunda at the time. And then you had Master's friend, Jitendra. And I'll just read a line that shows you Ananta's consciousness. So it starts off by Ananta's telling this to Mukunda. It would serve you right if Father disinherited you, Mukunda. How foolishly you are throwing away your life. You know, from a worldly perspective, somebody who lives using spiritual principles is often thought of as foolish. They are often thought of as, oh, you are throwing your life away, as in all that matters is you should be earning money all the time. Not realizing that people who have faith in God have got their own ways of bringing to themselves what they need. And so and then Master says, you well know, Ananta, I seek my inheritance from the Heavenly Father. And the brother says, money first. God can come later. See, and in fact, a lot of us have that consciousness that, oh, I need to make my life, financial life secure, and then I will search for God or devote time to God. And so what does Master's response to that is? His response is, God first. Money is his slave. Who can tell? Life may be too short. And of course, like, you know, Ananta then kind of gave Master this challenge. Well, if you think that your Heavenly Father is going to provide you with your needs, then how about I send you to Vrindavan, and I don't give you any money, and you've got to make sure that you get there, don't miss any meals, don't tell anybody about your plight, and come back home by midnight. And then he says, if you manage to fulfill all those conditions, I will get you to initiate me into Kriya Yoga. And so Master and Jitendra, Ananta buys them the ticket because he buys them one-way ticket to go to Vrindavan, not giving them any money. And at that moment, Jitendra gets very edgy, you know, a bit like doubting Thomas. And Master had no hesitation. He knew that something will happen and he'll be able to. He had that much faith. There was not an ounce of doubt. But Jitendra was very, very doubtful. But he still went along with Master. He wanted Ananta to give him some coins in case we get stuck, you know, at least I'll be able to send you a telegram if you give me a rupee or two. And Master said, no, if you take any money, I'm not going with you. And isn't that how sometimes we think, oh, but I'll just keep this much for the security, just in case. Can we trust that whatever we need will come to us when we need it? Can we trust that Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, knows all our needs? Somebody who loves God, their ways can seem so foolish to somebody who's worldly. To Ananta, Master seemed just so foolish. You are like throwing your life away. But then, of course, Master fulfilled all those conditions that Ananta set on him, and Ananta was very, very humbled. And he asked Master to initiate him into Kriya Yoga. And Master says that his life was very short. He died at a fairly early age. So one of the things about money magnetism is really it requires faith. Faith that we have the ability to bring to us what we need when we need it. If we hoard it, that money becomes stagnant, like the stagnant water. But if we allow that to flow, then it just draws more to us. We create a flow. Hoarding blocks the flow of energy. But using it in ways that will benefit you and benefit others will keep the channels open. Let's see what other seed. I had quite a few seed thoughts that I had written. So to attract, I think we've discussed this, to attract a steady flow of money, we must learn to view money not as a thing merely, but as an expression of energy, ultimately an expression of our energy. See, often, if you are very, very passive, then you will probably just have your money sitting in term deposits, or you give it to somebody else to invest. But if you have more rajasic energy or sattvic energy, you will probably use that money for your own projects rather than giving it to somebody else to invest in their pet projects. Because isn't that investing in funds and all is? Somebody else is using your money for their projects. Why? Because you haven't got any projects of your own. And so if you lose that money, well, you deserve to lose that money. Because you're wanting somebody else to do the work for you. Look at Swami. What did he put the money in that he earned? Of course, he didn't hoard it. Asha has said many times that millions of dollars flowed through Swami, but he never kept any of it. But look at what has been achieved as a result. You think that would have been achieved if he had just given it to investment companies to put it in, other people's pet projects? Because isn't that what businesses are? They are somebody's pet projects. Something to think about.
Because usually they want to unload their pet project because they have the money from you. It's going to be used in some other way.
So money too can be used in a very passive way, and putting it in other people's projects is a very passive use of money, unless you also believe in what somebody is doing and you want to help that project along. That's a very different story. Okay, and then he says, developing money magnetism depends to a great extent on understanding how to use money properly. So it's not just about acquiring, but money magnetism comes from using your money properly. Using money properly depends on realizing that in acquiring money, we don't merely manipulate material forces in our favor. So it's not just about something that will benefit me only. Or I want a boat, I want a beach house, I want another flash car. But we need to look beyond that if we are to truly magnetize money to us. And then he says, acquisition of money isn't a matter of luck. We attract money to us depending on the attitudes that we hold, depending on the energy that flows through us, which means that equally we can repel money from us. Failure to acquire money is essentially an act of repulsion, pushing it from us while we imagine that we are doing our best to acquire it. And then he says, learning how to attract money and how to put it to proper use depend on understanding what truly constitutes our needs, that is our own and others' highest good. I read that before. It's not a matter of how much you have, but how will you know how to use what you have? So time and time again, he's talking about how you use your money. So in the subject of money magnetism, the first chapter talks about how you use your money. If tomorrow, you were given $300,000, what would you do with it? And if you think, I don't know what I'll do with that money, that tells us something right. It's a good question to ask yourself. If I came into contact with money tomorrow, what would I do? Vida was telling me a story. She was working for a little while for a woman, and this was quite a wealthy woman. And this woman was telling Vida, and that particular weekend there was a big lotto draw, and she had bought a ticket, and she was saying, if she wins this, was quite a large, several $1 million. She says, if I win this lotto, I will be able to help so many people. And Veda was thinking, but she's already rich. She's wealthy. Why can she not do that same action now? It's all very well to say that if something comes to me that I haven't really worked for, I can give that away. But are you able to give away what you have worked for? That's the true test, right? So, giving is a very important part of attracting money. And we don't have to kind of wait until we win lotto in order for us to give. We can still have this consciousness of giving. You don't have to be giving large sums of money, but having that consciousness of giving. And if we're not used to giving, just try in small ways. And notice how it benefits you more than probably it benefits the person receiving it. Because in giving, my experience is we never lose anything. And sometimes if we give more than what we are comfortable with, you can be almost certain that something will come your way that you weren't expecting. And I just had this experience just 2 days ago, My cousin's daughter in Fiji got married. And in the Indian system, there is a tradition of how much you give. And it's actually a very, very small amount. And I couldn't feel that I could give that amount because it was just so small that it would go nowhere in covering the expenses for the wedding and all that. And I know that my cousins in Fiji, they're just, they're not wealthy. They would have just, scraped up enough money to have this wedding for the daughter and all. And so I gave, much more than what the tradition is to give. And my cousin said to me, that's a lot to give. And I said, no, I wanted to give that. The very next day, or could have been the same night, I had this notification on my phone that this amount was banked into your account. And I thought, where could that money have come from? Because, I mean, I usually know what I'm expecting on any particular day. And I wasn't expecting this sum of money. And I looked up. This was a quote that I had given several months ago. I had no expectation of that quote coming through because it hadn't come through all this time. And the amount was different by only $50. So sometimes when we just stretch ourselves beyond what we are comfortable giving, we'll find that something else will come and reciprocate. And you can't reason these things out. Often in matters of money, we can get all very rational and start, looking at all the details that, oh, if I do this, I will lose this much money and this is going to cost me this much. But, can we trust that God has plans for us that we don't even know of? And maybe those He cannot give us unless we open ourselves to Him by giving to others. I mean, this was it was quite a miracle when that happened, where the money that I gave to my cousin and the money that came along, it was just completely unexpected. Just different by $50. And try it in small ways and see what happens, just out of curiosity, as in have fun playing with these concepts and see what happens in your life. Knowing all of this is not going to change anything in your life, but try it. Use your money in a way that you haven't used before. Of course, use your common sense. You don't want to gamble it all away. Use common sense, but just play with it, and see what happens. And if nothing happens, that's fine too. And then little by little, you can, increase your betting. Swami gives an example. I'm going to finish soon. Swami gives the example of, not in here, but I've heard him talk about it, that they were pledging money for different projects. And one of the projects was a much bigger project, and he knew that nobody would pledge for it. So it was a few $1,000s. And so he pledged that money, and he didn't have it at the time, not knowing where it was going to come from, but he pledged it anyway. And then not long after that, I don't know what the time span was, it was almost felt like it was immediate, that somebody gave him a check of exactly that amount, because somebody had died and they wanted to give this money to Swami, and so that money came. And so sometimes, it's good to put yourself in a situation which is just a little out of your comfort zone, and then just see what happens. And if your intention, the thing that you have put the money to, all of that is for a greater good, benefits you, benefits other people, then you can be almost assured that there is no loss. There is an affirmation in the Swami's affirmation book. I don't remember it exactly, but it goes something like, when I give to others, I'm not giving anything away. For that which I give... does anybody know that affirmation?
What I give to others, I give not away, for in the greater reality.
Or in giving to others.
What I give to others, I give not away, for in my greater reality, it remains ever mine. And I'm not sure under what topic that is, but it might be under sharing or generosity.
It's in the affirmations book.
No, what I mean is it under generosity or sharing, or I can't remember exactly, but it's one of those. But I want you to try playing with that concept, that what you give to others, you give not away. For in the greater reality, it is ever yours. And I experienced that just this week. So, any questions? Or shall we do some singing?
So I have to do this on behalf of Bradley. He's been doing fundraiser for the. Oh, sorry.
My son Radley has been doing a fundraiser for his school. It's for the Heart Foundation, and he's raised $185 so far for it. And he's just really putting the energy into. He's really interested in it, and he often says there shouldn't be any money. So this has been really helpful because now I can teach him that concept. And I think the fundraiser he's doing is a really good opportunity. So I might share it to the page share the page with you all if you feel to donate.
Wonderful.